This is episode 2 of Questions from the Box, where I read questions that were put in a box by real kids from youth group. First one, Team Iron Man or Team Cap by Joey. They're both wrong, and they're both right. I'm going to go with Team Cap, though. But really, the whole Civil War story kind of bothers me because they should have just sat down and talked it out. I think they could have gotten somewhere. Are you excited for the Candy Carniv? This is obviously a really old question because we had a Candy Carnival on October 31st. Yes, I was very excited for it, and it was fun. Who was Bob Ross at youth group? In costume, obviously, that was Damon. We should have a youth group movie night. You're absolutely right, Lila, and I'd like to know what movie you think I should watch, so comment on that. Not a question, just says quack. Star Wars or Star Trek? Obs better. Signed, Joey. Okay, Joey's just trying to start stuff, obviously. Emotionally, nostalgically, I like Star Wars better, but objectively, Star Trek is better. I am going to take a group photo. All right. Why you bully Mark? I don't bully Mark. I love Mark. He supplies me with most of my content. You should grow an afro, Drew. Smiley face. I mean, I'm not that far off. 1 John chapter 5, verses 16 through 17. What's up with that? It's a really good question because if we read these verses out of context, we might be led to believe that there are some sins that aren't a big deal and some sins that are. But that's not the case. The verses say, if you see any brother or sister commit a sin that does not lead to death, you should pray and God will give them life. I refer to those whose sin does not lead to death. There is a sin that leads to death. I'm not saying that you should pray about that. All wrongdoing is sin, and there is a sin that does not lead to death. So once again, without context, we might think that this is about specific sins. But it's not about sins. It's about people, specifically people who are following Jesus and people that aren't. This whole chapter is written to believers. So when John writes this, he's talking to people who are already following Christ. If you're one of those people, sin, though it is still something you struggle with, Christians aren't sinless. We know this. The Bible is very clear about that. But if you are a Christian, sin for you does not lead to death. Okay? And so it's saying when you see another believer struggling with a sin, you should pray for them, even though that sin does not lead to death. Now, what is the sin that leads to death? It's the sin of the unbeliever. We know this because in verses 13 through 15, we learn that those who believe in the Son of God will have eternal life. And actually, we see this all over the New Testament. So once again, if you're a Christian, sin is not a source of condemnation or death for you. If you're a Christian, you are no longer subject to the bondage of a sinful lifestyle and therefore the death that comes with it. So if you are that person, walk in newness of life. And walk in the nature of your Christ identity and not in the nature of your sinful flesh identity.